Recently, I found a website that completely blew my mind. The design is clean, the visuals are smooth, but there is one thing that instantly caught my attention. There is a slider on this website that I had never seen before. Not on Dribble, not on awards, nowhere. It feels fluid, natural, and almost alive when you interact with it. So I paused, analyzed it frame by frame, broke down the logic, and decided to recreate it from scratch. In this video, I am going to show you exactly how I built this unique slider using Next.js and Smooothy. If you like this kind of unique breakdown videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really motivates me a lot. So, without wasting any more time, let's get started. Our layout.js is very simple. The only thing we are importing here is two fonts that we will be using throughout this project. In the page.js, I have imported a component called swiper. This component is where we will be write our entire animation logic. I have already written some dummy data, which includes text, a username, and a background color. I have also imported everything we need, including code from Smooothy. For the layout, I am creating a full-size div with flex layout. It will hold two divs inside it. I am giving the first div half width and full height with flex column layout. It will hold some text. I am using an h2 tag and setting the font size to 14 VW with uppercase text, a tight line height, and a bold font width. Then I am adding a paragraph tag with a font size of 1.5 VW, a medium font weight, slightly muted text color, some top margin, and a fixed width for better readability. Now our left side layout is done. It is time to create the right side swiper layout. Just like the left side, I am creating a div that takes half width and full height. Inside this, I am creating another div with flex layout. This div will hold our swiper card. Now I am looping over the slides data array and rendering a card for each slide. Each card has a fixed width and height, rounded corners, and a flex column layout. I am also adding spacing between the cards, applying the background color dynamically from the data, and giving each card a subtle border. Inside the card, I am rendering a paragraph that displays the slide text with larger font size, medium font weight, tight line height, and a black text color. I am creating one more paragraph to display the username using a slightly smaller font size and a muted text color. I forgot to add the return at the top. After fixing that, our layout is almost complete. Now we need some space between the cards, so we add a condition. It checks whether the current card is not the last one in the array. If it is not the last card, we apply a right margin of 2 VW to create a gap between the cards. For the last card, no margin is added, which prevents the extra space at the end. Now we have successfully completed our layout. It's time to move on to the animation. First, I am creating a wrapper ref and attaching it to our slider wrapper. Then I am using use effect, and inside it I am getting the wrapper element from the ref and returning early if it doesn't exist. Now I am converting the wrapper's children into an array and storing them in the slides variable, so we can work with each slide easily. Next, we are making sure that no text gets selected while interacting with slider. We do this by preventing the default select start behavior, which stops the browser from selecting text. Then we disable text selection using user select and WebKit user select, so it works across all browsers. Finally, we set touch action to pan Y, which allows vertical scrolling while preventing horizontal touch gesture from interfering with the animation. Then I am creating a new slider instance using code and passing the wrapper along with some configuration options. The slider is not infinite, snapping is disabled and variable widths are enabled, and the movement is smooth using a small lerp factor with speed decay. The bounce limit is set to 0 to prevent any bounce at the edges. Now we are using set offset to control how the slider stops at the end. we calculate the gap between slides based on the viewport width, then compute the offset to the last slide using its width and the gap. Finally, we return the difference between the total width and the last slide's offset, so the slider ends at the correct position. After that, we are using the onUpdate callback. Inside it, we calculate a viewport based offset by taking 10% of window width. Then we loop through each slide. For every slide, we get its width, calculate its current position by adding the slider's current value, and read the background color from the slide data. Now I am checking whether the current slide is the last one in the array. If the slide has moved past the left side of the viewport and is not the last slide, we calculate a ratio based on how far the slide has moved relative to its width, and then apply style to animate it accordingly. I am setting the background color of the slide using the value from the data and applying a subtle border. I am also defining the transform origin on the left side of the slide, slightly below the center, so the transform animation feels more natural. Now I am moving the slide horizontally based on the slider's current value and how far it has moved to the left. I am also rotating the slide slightly and scaling it down as it moves out. At the same time, I am keeping the slide position relatively and updating its z-index so the stacking order stays correct. Otherwise, I am keeping the slide in its normal state. I am setting the background color and border, moving the slide only based on the slider's current value, and updating the z-index to maintain the correct stacking order. Now I am creating a few variables to manage the animation state. I am using AnimID to track the animation frame, was dragging to check if dragging happened, and momentum to store movement momentum. I am also defining momentum multiplier and a decay value to control how fast the motion slows down. Then I am creating an animate function. Inside it, I am calling slider.update on every frame to keep the slider animation in sync. Now I am checking whether the slider is currently being dragged. If it is, I am marking that dragging has happened and resetting the momentum. When the drag ends, I am calculating the momentum based on the slider speed, storing it, and resetting the dragging state. After that, I am checking if the momentum is strong enough to continue the movement. If it is, I am adding the momentum to the slider's target position and gradually reducing it using the decay value. I am also clamping the target value so the slider stays within its allowed scroll limit. Now I am calling request animation frame and storing its ID so the animate function keeps running on every frame. After that, I am calling the animate function to start the animation loop. Finally, I am returning a cleanup function. Inside it, I am cancelling the request animation frame, removing the select start event listener from the wrapper, and destroying the slider instance to avoid memory leaks when the component unmounts. Here I made a typing mistake, so I am fixing it now. And finally, we built a unique slider using Next.js and Smooothy. If this video was helpful for you, let me know in the comments. I will see you in the next one.